Hey everyone, today we dive into one of the most chilling and calculated games of cat and mouse in criminal history. The story of a man who tormented an entire city for over 30 years while living among them as the perfect neighbor, but turned murder into a sick form of performance art, taunting police and the media with cryptic letters while hiding in plain sight as a church-going family man. The incredible story of Dennis Rader is one that will challenge everything you think you know about serial killers. Because this wasn't just about the crimes themselves, it was about the game, the attention, the power he felt over an entire community living in fear. You won't believe how close he came to never being caught, and how his own narcissism ultimately became his downfall after decades of perfect camouflage. So before we dive in, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now get comfortable, grab something to drink, and let's experience this incredible story together, because we're about to dive deep into a tale that proves sometimes the most dangerous predators are the ones who look exactly like everyone else. Picture this, it's January 15th, 1974, and Joseph Otero is getting ready for work at the Air Force Base in Wichita, Kansas. He's a quiet man devoted to his family, never imagining that this ordinary Tuesday morning would be his last. His wife Julie is still in bed, their 11-year-old daughter Josephine is getting ready for school, and 9-year-old Joseph Jr. is probably thinking about nothing more complicated than what he'll have for breakfast. This is the American dream in its purest form, a hard-working family in a safe neighborhood, where the biggest worry is whether the kids remembered their homework. But someone has been watching this house. Someone has been planning, studying their routines, learning their schedules. At 7:30 that morning, as the family goes about their normal routine, there's a knock at the door. When Joseph Otero opens it, he sees a young man, clean-cut, polite, claiming to have car trouble. This is the moment that changes everything, because what Joseph doesn't know is that this polite stranger has come here to kill, and he's brought everything he needs to do it. The man pushes his way inside, and suddenly the Otero family finds themselves face to face with a nightmare. The intruder has a gun, and he's calm, almost businesslike as he explains that he's here to rob them. He seems so normal, so reasonable, that maybe, just maybe, if they cooperate, everything will be okay. He ties them up, tells them he just needs their car and some money, and then he'll be gone. But cooperation isn't going to save them, because this man didn't come here to rob anyone. He came here to kill, and he's been fantasizing about this moment for months. One by one, he murders the entire family. Joseph first, then Julie, then the children. But here's where the story gets truly disturbing, because this isn't a crime of passion or desperation. This is methodical, calculated, and worst of all, it's just the beginning. The killer doesn't just murder them and leave. He stays in the house, moving through their belongings, taking his time, savoring the moment. He's not in a hurry because he's not panicking. This is exactly what he wanted to happen. When the police arrive later that day, they find a crime scene that defies explanation. 4 family members, murdered in their own home, with no signs of forced entry, no evidence of a struggle that would suggest they fought back. The killer had complete control from the moment he entered, and he took his time with each victim. Detective Bernie Duratsky, one of the first on the scene, would later say that in 20 years of police work, he'd never seen anything like it. The coldness, the calculation, the complete absence of humanity in how these murders were carried out. But here's what makes this story truly terrifying. The killer doesn't disappear into the night like most criminals. He doesn't try to cover his tracks or hide from what he's done. Instead, he decides to make himself known, to turn his crimes into a twisted form of entertainment. 3 months after the Otero murders, the Wichita Eagle newspaper receives a phone call from a man with a calm, measured voice. He tells them exactly where to find a letter he's left for them. And when they retrieve it, they discover something that chills them to the bone. The letter is typed, neat, professional looking, and it contains details about the Otero murders that only the killer could know. But more than that, it contains a confession, a detailed account of how he murdered the family, written in a tone that's almost casual, like he's describing a day at the office. He signs it with 3 letters that would terrorize Wichita for the next 3 decades. BTK, ETK, beat, torture, kill. This isn't just a confession, it's a calling card, an announcement that he's here, he's not going away, and he wants everyone to know exactly what he's capable of. The police realize they're dealing with something unprecedented, Most serial killers try to avoid attention, to stay hidden, to keep their crimes secret. But this one is different. He wants to be known. He wants to be feared. He wants to play games with the police, the media, and the entire city of Wichita. The letter contains not just a confession, but a warning. This is only the beginning. And he's true to his word. On April 4, 1974, just weeks after the first letter, 21-year-old Catherine Bright is at home with her 19-year-old brother Kevin when there's a knock at the door. The same polite stranger, the same calm demeanor, the same lie about needing help. Kevin opens the door and instantly knows something is wrong. The man has a gun and he's forcing his way inside. But this time, something goes differently. Kevin Bright is young, athletic, and he's not going to go down without a fight. When the intruder tries to tie him up, Kevin breaks free and struggles for the gun. In the chaos that follows, Kevin is shot twice, but he manages to escape and run for help. The killer, frustrated that his perfect plan has been disrupted, takes out his anger on Catherine. By the time help arrives, she's been murdered, and the killer is gone. But Kevin Bright is alive, and he's seen the killer's face. This should have been the end of the story. The police have a witness, a description, and a crime scene with evidence. But the killer is too smart, too careful, and too lucky. Kevin's description leads nowhere, and the physical evidence isn't enough to identify anyone. The killer has escaped again, and worse, he's learned from his mistakes. He's not going to let anyone escape again. But here's where the story takes an even stranger turn, because the killer doesn't just continue murdering. He begins what can only be described as a correspondence course in terror. Over the next few years, he sends letter after letter to the police and the media. Some contain poems, others have crude drawings, and all of them are filled with details about his crimes and hints about future victims. He's not just killing people, he's creating a narrative, turning his crimes into a story that he's telling to the entire city. The letters reveal a mind that's both brilliant and completely twisted. He knows exactly how to manipulate the media, how to keep his name in the headlines, how to make sure that everyone in Wichita knows he's still out there. He sends a letter to a local TV station with a detailed list of his victims, complete with scores rating how well each murder went. He sends another letter containing a word puzzle that, when solved, reveals the location of one of his victims' belongings. This isn't just about murder anymore. It's about power, control, and the sick satisfaction he gets from knowing that an entire city is afraid of him. The most chilling part is how normal he sounds in these letters. There's no ranting, no obvious signs of madness. He writes like a businessman sending a memo, casual and matter-of-fact about the most horrific crimes imaginable. He complains about how the media isn't giving him enough attention. He corrects inaccuracies in their reporting, and he promises that there will be more victims. He's turned murder into a form of entertainment, and he's both the star and the director of his own twisted show. Meanwhile, the people of Wichita are living in a state of constant fear. Hardware stores can't keep locks in stock. Gun sales skyrocket. People who have lived in the same neighborhood for decades are suddenly afraid to walk to their mailbox after dark. The killer has achieved exactly what he wanted: complete psychological control over an entire city. But then something unexpected happens, and the letters stop. The murders stop. For years, there's nothing. The police wonder if he's moved away, if he's been arrested for another crime, if he's died. The city slowly begins to breathe again, to believe that maybe, just maybe, the nightmare is over. But it's not over. He's still there, still watching, still planning. He's just gotten better at hiding. What they don't know is that the killer has found the perfect camouflage. He's gotten married, had children, and settled into a life that looks completely normal from the outside. He's active in his church. He's a Boy Scout leader. He works for the city in a job that actually gives him access to people's homes. He's become the perfect neighbor, the kind of man that people trust with their keys when they go out of town. He's hiding in plain sight, and he's loving every minute of it. During this quiet period, he's not inactive. He's learning, growing, perfecting his craft. He's studying other serial killers, reading about their methods, their mistakes. He's developing new techniques, new ways to avoid detection. And most importantly, he's choosing his next victims, watching them, learning their routines, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. In 1977, he breaks his silence in the most horrific way possible. The Vian family, just a normal family living a normal life, becomes his next target. But this time, he's not content with just killing. He wants to experiment, to see how far he can push his victims before they break. The crime scene that the police discover defies description. and the detective who finds it will have nightmares for the rest of his life. The killer has evolved. He's no longer just murdering people, he's creating works of art, twisted sculptures of death that reveal the depths of his depravity. He's taking photographs, keeping souvenirs, turning his crimes into a personal museum of horror. And once again, he sends letters, this time with even more detail, even more arrogance. The police are helpless. They have task forces. They have FBI profilers. They have the best investigators in the country working on this case. But they're dealing with someone who's always one step ahead. Someone who seems to know exactly how police investigations work. Someone who's careful enough to leave no useful evidence and smart enough to avoid every trap they set. The breakthrough comes in the most unexpected way. In 1979, the killer makes his first real mistake. He's been watching a woman named Anna Williams, studying her routine, planning her murder. He breaks into her house while she's away, but something goes wrong. Maybe he hears a noise, maybe he sees a neighbor. But whatever it is, he panics and runs. But he leaves something behind, something that will haunt Anna Williams for the rest of her life. When Anna comes home, she finds a poem on her kitchen table. It's typed, just like all the BTK letters, and it describes in graphic detail exactly what the killer had planned to do to her. The poem is titled, "Oh Anna, Why Didn't You Appear?" And it's a chilling insight into the mind of a predator who sees his victims not as people but as objects in his twisted game. Anna Williams realizes how close she came to death, how she was saved by pure chance. The killer had been in her house, had touched her belongings, had planned her murder down to the smallest detail. The police use this near miss to develop a better profile of the killer, but they're still no closer to catching him. Then, in 1985, the killer strikes again, and this time, he targets a family that includes children. The Fager family becomes his victims, and once again, the crime scene reveals a level of cruelty that seems almost inhuman. But this murder is different from the others, because this time, there are witnesses, not to the crime itself, but to the killer's behavior afterward. Neighbors report seeing a man in the area around the time of the murder, acting strangely, almost like he's lost or confused. For the first time, the killer doesn't seem completely in control. The police wonder if he's starting to make mistakes, if the pressure of staying hidden for so long is finally getting to him. But then, once again, the killer disappears. The letters stop, the murders stop, and for years, there's nothing. The police begin to wonder if this time, he really is gone. Maybe he's moved, maybe he's died, maybe he's been arrested for another crime. The case goes cold, and the investigators are forced to move on to other cases, other crimes, other killers. But the killer isn't gone, he's just gotten better at being invisible. He's learned to control his urges, to wait for the perfect moment, to make sure that when he does strike, it's worth the risk. He's become a master of patience, and he's using that patience to perfect his craft. During this time, he's living a double life that's so complete, so convincing, and that even the people closest to him have no idea what he's capable of. He's the perfect husband, the devoted father, the helpful neighbor. He volunteers at his church, he helps with community events. He's the kind of man that people look up to and respect. He's created a false identity so complete that even he sometimes believes it. But underneath the surface, the real Dennis Rader is still there, still planning, still fantasizing about his next victim. He's keeping detailed journals of his crimes. He's preserving souvenirs from his victims. He's creating a secret world where he can relive his murders over and over again. He's turned his basement into a shrine to his own evil, and he spends hours there, lost in his own twisted memories. The years pass, and the killer becomes more confident, more arrogant. He begins to believe that he's untouchable, that he's too smart to ever be caught. He starts taking bigger risks, getting sloppy with his secret life. He doesn't realize it, but he's setting himself up for the fall that will end his reign of terror. In 1991, the killer decides to break his silence once again. He's been watching the news, reading about other serial killers who have been caught, and he's frustrated that he's not getting the attention he thinks he deserves. He's been the perfect killer for over 15 years, and no one is talking about him anymore. His ego can't stand it. He sends a letter to the police, not to confess to a new crime, but to remind them that he's still out there, still dangerous, still the one who got away. The letter is different from his earlier communications. It's more rambling, more self-congratulatory, and it reveals a man who's become completely consumed by his own mythology. The police are shocked to receive the letter. They thought BTK was dead, gone, finished. But here he is, reaching out from the shadows, still playing his sick game, The letter doesn't contain any new information about crimes, but it does contain something that will prove crucial years later. Clues about the killer's real identity. The killer has become so confident in his own abilities that he's starting to reveal too much about himself. He mentions details about his life, his work, his family, without realizing that he's giving the police the pieces they need to solve the puzzle. He's so focused on his own brilliance that he can't see the trap he's setting for himself. But the police aren't ready to spring that trap yet. They need more evidence, more clues, more time to build a case that will stick. They begin a careful campaign to draw the killer out, to make him communicate more, to get him to reveal more about himself. They know that his ego is his weakness, and they're going to use that against him. The strategy works. Over the next few years, the killer sends more letters, more clues, more details about his crimes and his life. Each communication gives the police another piece of the puzzle, another clue to his identity. They're building a profile, not just of his crimes, but of the man himself. And then, in 2004, the killer makes the mistake that will destroy him. He's been reading about the BTK case in the news, and he's annoyed by the inaccuracies in the reporting. He decides to set the record straight, to give the media and the police the real story of his crimes. He sends a package to the Wichita Eagle that contains photographs, documents, and a detailed timeline of his murders. But this isn't just about correcting the record. The killer is lonely, isolated by his own success at staying hidden. He misses the attention, the fear, the power he felt when the whole city was talking about him. He wants to be famous again, to be the center of attention, to remind everyone that he's still the one who got away. The package he sends contains more than just information about his old crimes. It contains clues about new victims, people he's been watching, people he's planning to kill. The killer isn't just reminiscing about his past crimes, he's announcing his return to active killing. The game is starting again, and this time, he's determined to make it even more spectacular. The police realize they're dealing with a killer who's evolved, who's learned from his mistakes, who's become even more dangerous with age. They know they have to catch him before he kills again, but they also know that this might be their only chance. The killer is communicating again, taking risks, exposing himself. They have to use this opportunity to finally bring him down. The task force that's assembled to catch BTK is unlike anything the Wichita police have ever put together. They have FBI profilers, computer experts, forensic specialists, and some of the best investigators in the country. They know that they're dealing with a killer who's outsmarted them for 30 years, and they're not going to underestimate him again. The breakthrough comes from an unexpected source. The killer, in his arrogance, decides to modernize his communication methods. He asks the police, through a letter, if they can trace a floppy disk if he sends them one. The police, knowing that they need to keep him communicating, lie to him. They tell him that floppy disks can't be traced, that it would be safe for him to use one. The killer believes them. He's been out of the technology loop for so long that he doesn't realize how much computer forensics have advanced. He thinks he's being clever, using modern technology to stay ahead of the police, but he's actually handing them the evidence they need to catch him. When the police receive the floppy disk, they immediately begin analyzing it. Within hours, they have something they've never had before, a direct connection to the killer's real identity. The disk contains metadata that reveals it was last used on a computer at Christ Lutheran Church in Wichita, and the last person to modify files on it was someone named Dennis. The police can hardly believe it. After 30 years, they finally have a name, a location, a real lead. They run a quick check on Dennis Rader, the president of the church congregation, and what they find amazes them. He's exactly the kind of person they would never have suspected. A family man, a community leader, a respected member of society. But as they dig deeper, they realize that Dennis Rader is more than just a suspect. He's their perfect match. He fits the profile. He was in the right place at the right time for all the murders. And he has access to the kind of information that only the killer would have. They have their man, but they need to be careful. They can't arrest him based on just the floppy disk. They need more evidence, and they need to make sure they don't spook him before they're ready. The police begin the most careful surveillance operation in their history. They follow Dennis Rader everywhere. They monitor his communications, they watch his house, his work, his family. They're looking for any sign that he's planning another murder, any evidence that will give them the proof they need to make an arrest. What they discover is a man living two completely separate lives. During the day, he's Dennis Rader, the helpful city compliance officer, the devoted husband and father, the active church member. But at night, alone in his basement, he's BTK, reliving his crimes, planning new murders, savoring the power he feels over life and death. The police find evidence of his double life everywhere. His work as a compliance officer gives him access to people's homes, their schedules, their vulnerabilities. He's been using his job to scout potential victims, to learn their routines, to plan their murders. He's turned his legitimate work into a hunting ground, and no one has suspected a thing. But the police need more than just circumstantial evidence. They need something that will prove, beyond any doubt, that Dennis Rader is BTK. And they decide to use the same technology that caught him to build an airtight case. They collect DNA samples from his family, comparing them to evidence found at the crime scenes decades earlier. The results are conclusive. Dennis Rader is BTK. The man who has terrorized Wichita for 30 years, who has killed at least 10 people, who has taunted the police and the media with his letters and his crimes, is a city employee with a wife and 2 children who live just miles from where his victims died. On February 25, 2005, Dennis Rader is arrested while driving to work. The man who has spent 30 years outsmarting the police, who has always been one step ahead, who has always been in control, is finally caught. But even in arrest, he can't help but reveal his true nature. When the police tell him he's under arrest for murder, he doesn't deny it. Instead, he seems almost relieved, almost happy that his secret is finally out. The interrogation that follows is unlike anything the police have ever experienced. Dennis Rader doesn't try to deny his crimes or claim innocence. Instead, he seems eager to talk, to finally tell someone about all the murders he's committed, all the people he's killed, all the details that only he knows. He's been carrying these secrets for 30 years, and now he finally has an audience. But there's something deeply disturbing about the way he talks about his crimes. He describes them like they're business transactions, matter-of-fact and emotionless. He talks about his victims like they're objects, not people. He shows no remorse, no guilt, no understanding of the pain he's caused. He's proud of what he's done, and he wants everyone to know how clever he's been. The police realize they're dealing with a man who's completely disconnected from normal human emotion. He's been living among regular people for 30 years, mimicking their behavior, pretending to be normal. But inside, he's something else entirely. He's a predator who's learned to wear the mask of humanity, but underneath, there's nothing human left. The trial that follows becomes a media sensation. For the first time, the public gets to see the man who has terrorized their city for 3 decades. They expect to see a monster, but instead, they see someone who looks completely ordinary. Dennis Rader could be anyone's neighbor, anyone's coworker, anyone's friend. That's what makes him so terrifying. During the trial, Dennis Rader pleads guilty to all charges. But even in his guilty plea, he can't help but turn it into a performance. He describes each murder in detail, explaining his methods, his motivations, his feelings during each crime. He's finally getting the attention he's always craved, and he's savoring every moment of it. The families of his victims listen in horror as he describes their loved ones' final moments. They realize that for Dennis Rader, their family members weren't people. They were just props in his twisted fantasy. He remembers every detail of their murders, but he can't remember their names, their personalities, their hopes and dreams. They were nothing to him but objects to be used and discarded. Dennis Rader is sentenced to 10 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He'll spend the rest of his life in prison, never again able to hurt anyone, never again able to terrorize a community. But even in prison, he continues to seek attention, writing letters to the media, giving interviews, trying to stay relevant. The case of BTK changes the way police investigate serial crimes. The 30-year investigation becomes a textbook example of how patience, technology, and good old-fashioned detective work can eventually catch even the most careful killer. But it also serves as a reminder of how dangerous it is to underestimate the ability of evil to hide in plain sight. The people of Wichita are finally free from the fear that has haunted them for 30 years. They can walk their streets without looking over their shoulders. They can sleep without checking their locks 3 times. They can trust their neighbors without wondering if they're hiding a terrible secret. The nightmare is over, but the scars will remain forever. Dennis Rader thought he was the perfect killer, that he was too smart to ever be caught. But in the end, it was his own arrogance that destroyed him. He couldn't resist the urge to communicate, to brag, to remind everyone how clever he was. He needed the attention, the fear, the power, more than he needed his freedom. His ego was his weakness, and it was ultimately his downfall. The story of BTK is a reminder that evil can hide anywhere, that the most dangerous predators are often the ones who blend in perfectly with normal society. It's a story about the power of patient investigation, the importance of never giving up, and the ultimate triumph of justice over evil. But most of all, it's a story about the families who never stopped hoping for answers, who never stopped believing that their loved one's killer would someday be brought to justice. Dennis Rader may have terrorized Wichita for 30 years, but in the end, he lost the only game that really mattered. He thought he was playing against the police, but he was actually playing against time, against technology, against the relentless pursuit of justice. And in that game, there was only one possible outcome. The killer who thought he was perfect was finally, inevitably, caught.